Hey, TIG members, it's Tony, Aaron from ARC 23. If you're watching this, I had a series that I had been doing off and on over the years called Alliance Stories, which was just the goal of it. I mean, there's so many of you guys that are awesome people, awesome members. And the goal is just to kind of, build kind of community collaboration, visibility, whatever you want to call it, kind of with inside the group. And the other day I was like, man, I think I need to reboot Alliance Stories. So I pitched Aaron. I'm like, hey, Aaron, I'm thinking about bringing this out of the archives. You willing to jump in with me? And he's like, sure. So that's kind of the background of why you're seeing Alliance Stories again. And I'm going to give you just a quick little kind of synopsis of Aaron, and then I'm going to just introduce him and we're just going to have a conversation and see where the conversation takes us. But so Aaron's been with us a number of years. I'm going to tell you guys, I appreciate Aaron. Give him public praise right now. He is very engaged in the group, very engaged in our industry. He's paying attention to what's going on. He's trying to advocate within the different people he knows on behalf of our industry. The member collaborations, he's done a great job just kind of building his agency from the ground up, over the last, 8 years-ish, something like that.
Almost 8, yeah.
Yeah. And so anyway, that's, he's got a handful of employees doing just a great job. And that's why I wanted to have him on and share his story with you guys. And so anyway, so Aaron, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself, maybe a little bit of just a quick, casual kind of who you are, where you're located, maybe a little bit about what your agency looks like as far as shape and size and focus, and then we can go from there.
Okay. Yeah, it's, I mean, you already introed me, but so we're in Mission Viejo, and I'll be honest. So my background is not insurance at all. I used to be a ski instructor way back when, and had many different jobs getting out of the ski industry. And my mom had planted the seed with me a long time ago to say, and she was a financial planner. And she said, if I could have done it again, she would have been in insurance just because of the business model. So she planted that seed. I did some life insurance for a short time and hated it and swore off ever doing insurance ever again. And then I was out of a job living with my in-laws and had a newborn, and farmers tried to recruit me. And I went in for a lot of interviews with them. They usually offer someone a job after 3 interviews. And I made them have 6 interviews with me because I kept looking for the reason not to take the job. So anyway, I eventually took the job, and I stayed with farmers for about 1.5 years. And I was failing and knew I was never going to succeed because of their quotas. And so then because I had to write 4 life policies, and I didn't want to write life before because that was my bad experience. And then I left and went to a broker. And walking into that broker, I knew I was going to leave one day. And I had a friend who helped me craft my contract. And he put in that I could, that they would provide a BOR to me when I leave. So that way the agency is giving me the broker of record. They're just handing me my policies when I leave. That same friend actually introduced me to tech, and that's how I got it. So all this to say, here we are 7.5 years later. I have 2 employees, just hired another one. He starts next week. And our model is a little different. Like, we are very home focused. I go to a lot of realtor meetings. I go to 4 or 5 realtor meetings every single week. Yes, every single week. I've been doing that for about 10 years, going to the same meetings for all 10 years. I volunteer for everything that I can with the realtors. And fortunately, my phone rings, knock on wood, most of the time. So, but I also, I do want to share. So my setup is a little bit different too, that I have employees. I don't have producers. So I'm not a believer of having producers. I would rather have employees, not worry about commission splits, not worry about what their motivation is. I just want to hire people that are willing to help and educate people. And if the policies make sense, the clients buy. If it doesn't make sense, they don't buy. So I keep it as simple as I can. But hiring someone new, I don't want them to have experience. I want to train them from scratch, so that way they can be me. And I like redundancy. I want them to replace me when I'm not around. So that way I can be on vacation more and not in the office.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, I think that kind of ties us back into, did you hear a little echo there for a second?
A little
Or
bit.
no?
That's okay.
I think that I appreciate that backdrop and that context, because this is the beauty of the industry, right? As we've talked about, like, you can go all kinds of different directions. But I think as you were starting up, so I'm kind of pivot into that kind of the earlier days. From all the time that we've worked together, I've known you, your activity level and engagement, like you just said, in kind of, building those relationships. And we talked about this yesterday, actually, in the member collab about marketing versus sales, and, don't chase the eggs, get the goose, and, spend your time getting that goose in place, AKA your referral partners. But I think a lot of agents think, oh, I'll just get some referral partners, it'll be easy. You just said 4 or 5 meetings a week for 10 years. So the activity level is heavy, and that rainmaking, so to speak, is what feeds your model, right? Where you have employees, that account managers essentially, that can close that business, but don't have to have a sales function other than maybe cross-selling, upselling, retention, things like that. But I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit, when in the early days of when you started on the IA channel, and kind of just, and again, guys, we're not divulging any secret sauce of anything. So Aaron can say, no, Tony, that's my proprietary. I'm good with that too. But just in a high level, kind of, the effort and the energy that it takes to actually establish yourself, and the consistency moving forward. I don't know if you can kind of talk to that a little bit, or what your thoughts are on that.
I mean, it just takes time. And that's the hardest thing, is it just takes time. I mean, look, when we all started out, I don't know if you all remember your first paycheck, but my first paycheck from Farmers, I think I made $1,800 for a month. And I thought, all right, I made $1,800. Well, that doesn't cut it when you're living with your in-laws and you got a newborn. But all this to say, it's like I'm motivated to go and to keep going, because I don't, like, no offense to my in-laws, but I never want to move back there ever again. So I mean, if you want to know motivation, like, there's my why. It's want to provide for the family. So early on, it was just it's finding those referral sources, and then it's just staying consistent. I think one of the best things that ever happened to me is I'm at one of those meetings, one of those realtor meetings, and there was another farmer's agent there, and he came over to me and he said, Aaron, he said, one day there will be another Aaron Rosen that comes along and takes your place, because I was taking his place. And I said, no, there won't be. I said, because I will keep showing up.
Yeah.
So it was this profound moment that, I mean, I was only into the business a year when he had that conversation with me, and he felt like he was getting pushed out because I was the new guy. And he let me know, like, there'll be another new guy that shows up one day. And that's been my reminder of keep showing up, because there will be someone else that will take my place. And so by showing up every week consistently, I've maintained the relationships. And then when new people show up, then they're like, oh, that's the insurance guy. That's who you call. So the consistency is really, really important.
I agree. And I think kind of below the surface of consistency is building long-term, deep connections of trust and reliability in those relationships. So I think a lot of times, like, people will drop to a BNI group, they'll be there for 3 months, not get anything, and be gone, or whatever. BNI may be a bad example, because that kind of, those networking groups kind of have their own little challenges with them, and the pros and cons. But more specifically, in a referral partner, let's call it a CPA, a CFP, a realtor, a mortgage broker, whatever the group of those gooses that lay the eggs consistently that we gather. Everybody's got limited time. Everybody's got their reputation on the line for the part of the business that they're doing, that you are part of that value chain. And I think by being there and showing up and volunteering and adding value, building those relationships and deepening that trust, when somebody refers you, they get comfortable referring you once you've kind of proven, hey, we can deliver for you. But it's that ongoing, right? And then the value that you can add through the market cycles, the ups and downs that they have in their businesses, that we have in our business. Do you feel like that's a big portion of the requirement to not just show up, but to do it over a long period of time consistently?
Yes. So it's like realtors. If you're going to work with realtors, they can be challenging. They have difficulty trusting anyone. I remember the first time I showed up to one of those realtor meetings, there was a lender that was running the meeting. And I introduced myself and I said, hey, I'd love to be able to work with you. And he said, show up for a little while, then we'll talk again. Well, it took him 10 years before he referred himself to me. And he was buying a new house. So I knew I was going to play the long game. And I knew I just had to keep showing up because I had so much resistance from people when I first got there, and hearing those different things. And just, I mean, I'm up for a challenge. I'm pretty competitive. And I don't ever want to back down. So it's the consistency. And I guess going to those meetings, it's not just showing up. It is, providing the education when you're there. So when you have the opportunity to speak, it's what you're saying and how you're saying it, and delivering all the news of what's going on, whether it's good news or bad news. You're just delivering news. So it's giving the market updates. I mean, I realize right now I have not given a market update in a few months because there's no news. There's nothing new going on. We're kind of waiting for the DOI to do something. So I'm figuring first of the year, I'll be out speaking a whole bunch and presenting a whole bunch to those groups I go to all the time. But until there's a change, there's no real update.
Something completely side note, but somewhat related. So before we were going to do this call today, right? So obviously you got your logo on the screen, right? So I'm jump on Google. I'm like, hey, ARC23 insurance. Google that, looking for an image. So what was interesting is you had a 2 or 3 part YouTube series that was done a while back with, I think it was a mortgage broker or realtor. I can't remember. And I can't remember the guy's name, but you guys were sitting there in some office and he was kind of interview style, like asking you about earthquake or asking you about this or a few different questions. They were like maybe 3 to 5 minute videos, right? And I watched like 3 of them. And the other piece, right? So that's a way of delivering value, right? But that recording played right off of your being there, showing up, adding value, educating. And then for that realtor or mortgage broker, you may or may not recall who this is that I'm talking about. I don't know. We'd have to jump on YouTube and see, but clearly it was posted on his channel, not on yours. And so clearly he felt value to his clientele about the home insurance piece. Like, what are some of these important segments? But as I was watching those, I felt like, man, Aaron wouldn't have ever had that opportunity to do that with that realtor or that mortgage broker if he hadn't have been there and added value. And now he's showing up as the subject matter expert as an interviewee of this other person who's trying to deliver value for his clients. I thought that was great. Now, whether or not you've ever gotten a lead off of that or anything, it's just social proof, right? It's a random Google search, evergreen content that you never know when somebody's going to happen to watch it. I don't know if you can talk about some of the stuff you've done to feel like you've added value or the perception of some of your partners that have felt the value that you've added for them. I don't know if there's anything you want to talk about on that, but that's
so I actually didn't remember that video until you just said it. And I've done a couple of those, but anytime someone wants to talk about insurance, I'm up for it. But I think that I remember there was a presentation I gave at one of my meetings, and there was a realtor that came up to me afterwards. I never met him before. And he looked at me and he goes, "Hi, my name is Brandon." He goes, "I want you to be my insurance agent." And it was in that moment where I realized the power of me presenting persuaded him to want to work with me because he just liked me and he liked what I was saying and he liked what I was doing. And so, I mean, we have his car, his home, his umbrella, his, teenage kids are starting to drive now too. And I mean, this year, like rates went up a whole bunch and they check in with us frequently. And I told him straight up this year, I just said, hey, as a package, you have the best of what we have. I said, you can try this other company as a package. That's the only other place I could try and refer you to see if there's something better for your dollar. And they said, no, we want to stick with you. And
Yeah.
they said, we don't want someone else. So it's showing up, it's building the relationships. It is just being honest with people. And I mean, that's why I like not feeling this pressure to sell and having my team not feeling the pressure to sell. Like, yes, it's how we make money. But if we can just educate people and do the right thing. And I mean, we refer a lot of people to other insurance companies these days because we don't have the product, but hoping that they remember that. And, when we get turned back on and there's more markets, then they're still calling us.
Right. No, it's true. I think that's one of the, the old cliche, nobody wants to be sold. I think it's about, I think that kind of just friendliness, authenticity, true advice, like, and we've talked about this at various member meetings, like surely being a student of our craft, be a professional, it doesn't take a lot of effort to hone your skills and to know a little bit more than the next, man or woman, that's with you or competing against you. And I think that, if we can have that and then deliver that, to those prospects or clients and do what's best for them. And like you just said a second ago, many times it's, hey, I'm going to put you in my pipeline, but right now I'm not your best option. Boom, go this direction. And, you can, I know you and I have talked about different technology stuff and things like that, but the reality is like you set follow-ups and say, hey, let's reach out to that person, in a year from now and see if our markets have opened up and see what their situation is, whatever it may be. Let's pivot a little bit if you're cool with to some of the challenges that you've dealt with, starting from, you had built a bit of a book as a producer, so that made your transition to starting an agency a lot, not easier, but financially a little bit more feasible because you had a little bit of a foothold before you jumped. It wasn't like you left Farmers starting from 000, so what are some of the challenges you've kind of dealt with from, if you want to bookmark a few things around your startup phase to, some of the things you're dealing with more now, being 8 years in and a lot more established.
I think, even just going back to Farmers, I think the hardest thing is just starting. You start with nothing. Like I moved to Orange County. I knew 19 people. They were all related to my wife. So I'm not from here. I started with zero. I had nothing. But then going from Farmers and realizing I wasn't going to succeed and then moving to the brokerage, I started over. And so as a startup agent and you start over, it's hard every time. But then I was at the other agency and they had markets and I didn't get to meet any of the sales reps. And so in hindsight, I only met one sales rep. It was a nationwide rep. And in hindsight, I wish I had met all the reps because it would have made my transition so much easier to becoming a broker.
True.
Like the agency was getting the credit for writing the business. And so if there's any producers out there, my advice is meet the sales reps.
Yeah.
But even once I was going to leave and go out on my own, I couldn't get a firm yes from any of the sales reps until the book was released. So the hardest part was the transition where my agency where I was, they didn't want to let my book go, even though it was in the contract. Eventually they did, but then to get the companies to commit to me, they didn't know who I was because I never met them. So coming to TAG, it was an opportunity where I had a book and I said, I've already written all this business. Can I maintain these relationships and just keep going? And that was a great opportunity for me. I mean, I really appreciate it.
Well, no, obviously we're all in the same rowing, and we're all in the same boat trying to row in the same direction, which is, you know, everybody building their agencies and collectively, you know, trying to have more momentum, you know, together, right? And I think it's an interesting self-perpetuating, self-fulfilling kind of cyclical prophecy, whatever the words, where Tag is nothing without the Aarons of the world, right? There, a group doesn't exist. So, okay, so a group exists. An Aaron comes in, and Aaron's a great professional. He's got the drive, the motivation, the vision. Now he just needs the ability to start and to start building. And the more Aaron starts building and delivering value to his agency, to the carriers, the next Aaron that comes along gets a little bit of the love that comes from the proven results of the other Aarons that are there. And I'm sitting in the middle trying to orchestrate things, right? I'm not running your agency. You guys are running your agencies, but I'm the, you know, and the kids ask me, what do you do, Dad? I'm like, I don't know. I'm an intermediary. I'm a resourcer. I'm trying to help the people and get the stuff they need to do the things they need to do. But the point is like, everything that we do executes and fulfills on itself, and it builds brick by brick by brick, just like you're putting client by client, policy by policy, you know, everything kind of feeds on itself. And, you know, anyway, I could, you know me, I go a million different directions in my head. But so as far as like coming back to the main question on the challenges, as you started to get opportunities, right? The carriers started to come in line, you know, your product set started to kind of fill in as far as you having control of the ability to start, you know, controlling your own destiny within ARC23. That's you solo at the beginning. There came a point where you're like, I love being the guy, but I can't be the guy to everybody. And you had to say, okay, it's time for me to hire somebody. Like that is for most startup independent agents and most small businesses in general, moving from an owner operator to a owner manager / operator is a huge, huge step. And then there are different steps along the way that are big too. But for you, can you talk a little bit about your mindset or the inflection points or when you felt like I've got to hire somebody? Now I can afford it or kind of afford it. I've got to get somebody in. Like what was some of the mindset on that?
So when I opened ARC23, I could not afford to have someone, but I had someone immediately. So I hired someone right away when I was starting because I had support at my previous agency for sending out EOIs and RCEs and all that stuff. Meaning I could sell it, I could submit it, but all the paperwork and all the follow-up, I was not as good at. Meaning I know what my strengths are and I know where my weaknesses are. So I needed a support staff. So I felt very fortunate. I mean, my wife's cousin through marriage, she was looking for a job. And her grandfather was in insurance a long time ago. And she said, I think I might want to work with Aaron. And I literally drove over to her house and we chatted for 20 minutes. And my only question was, what do you like about insurance? And she said, I like helping people. And I said, great, you're hired.
Good interview, short interview.
Yeah, that was it. It's like, I like helping people. We're good. But she had to believe in me that I could pay her salary. And I paid her $15 an hour. And I literally was writing checks out of my own pocket for the first couple months or whatever it was. And then I put her on payroll on the first of the year and we started workers' comp and we did all that stuff. And, you know, here we are, we're, you know, 7.5 years later, she's still with me. She's the office manager. She runs the show.
That's awesome.
And then we hired someone else 4 years ago. So you're going back to the pain points. You can never afford to hire someone, but you also can't afford not to hire someone.
Right.
So yes, it's like hiring this new person. Between raises and hiring someone, I know it's at least 60 grand out of pocket for the next year, but I'm okay with it. Like I know that for us to keep growing and for us to have sanity and for everyone to feel like they are cared for, we need more bodies.
Yeah.
And so it's, yeah, I mean, it's, you have to hire someone because I don't want to do it all. I can't do it all. I don't want to work until midnight every night. And like I said earlier, like I want to go on vacations more. So having my team that can replace me and be me, I can manage more. I don't have to be in it as much. So I'm good at developing the relationships and making the phone ring. And then once the phone rings, it's ringing the office. Like I'm actually taking my cell phone. I've taken my cell phone off my business cards. It's off my email because I'm trying to transition into that. My team will help you.
Right. Which is a huge, once you have the team, that extracting yourself from the transaction. This is the whole point about the cliche. Again, another key business saying, work on your business, not in your business. That comes from Good to Great, or the E-Myth, I mean, which is a great book for anybody who's read it. I'm just kind of watching our clock. We're almost at 30 minutes, but I'm not trying to cut us short. We keep chatting, but there was a thought that kind of just came into my head, and then maybe we can start to land the plane. But I remember I read an article a number of years ago, and it was challenging this concept, which is how you operate. It was challenging this concept for independent agents that basically was like, oh, I have an agency. I just need to get a bunch of sales agents, and that's how I'm going to grow. And the article was basically saying, look, that is one way of doing it. But if you want to maximize the revenue of your agency, especially in the earliest days, if you are the best salesperson or the best rainmaker, do not hire agents, hire support people, because you retain 100% of the revenue in the agency rather than paying 40, 50%, whatever commission splits out. And that assumes, like in your situation, that you are the person who can go out there consistently executing and bringing the business in. It seems to me like that's the way, which is different than the conventional, way that most agencies work. It seems to me that's the way that you intentionally have built it based on your strengths and weaknesses and what you want to do. I'm assuming that you would say yes, Tony. That is correct, and I plan to continue scaling this way. Question is, as you replace yourself, who's the rainmaker, right?
So let's go back in time. I went to a tag meeting early on, and I was chatting with another agent there, and they were talking about producers, and they said, producers will come in and they leave, and I said, well, what do you all do? And they said, well, we will have them get the lead for us. We will quote it, meet with the client, and sell it, and then we pay a commission to the salesperson. And so I thought of that and I thought, okay, that's very interesting. That's a different type of model, but they're still doing the work. They're still doing it, but that way they're retaining the business, the relationship, and the policies with them as the agency. And I thought that's really good. And then I think I just tried to take it one step further where I just said, I don't want to deal with producers because they will come and go and they will potentially go out on their own, which is, then they're your direct competition. And I thought, I don't want to do it that way. And so I think I'm trying to break the mold in a way, and I don't have VAs that are helping out. It's people in the office. And so is it the right way? I don't know, but
Well,
it seems to be working okay for me so far. But to replace me, as far as me going to meetings, I'm still going to be going to meetings for the next 10 years or 20 years.
You love it. You love it. That's
You
the
do.
portion of business you enjoy. It's the people side of it. And yeah, so I think that kind of brings, back to my earlier comment. There are literally 1,000 ways to skin the insurance agency cat, and how you structure it. And that is actually one of the beautiful things I love about the group, because as you know, we've got solopreneurs that are solo forever. We've got people who are kind of doing a little bit of your model, more trying to have a couple of sales agents, some with large amounts of producers, right? Different industries, personalized commercial. I mean, it's all over the map as far as what you want to build and how you want to build it. And I think that is the blessing and the curse all at the same time, because we have a lot of, former captives in the group, captive insurance agents. And, when you're in the mothership, they kind of give you the structure and that's it. And that's nice because you kind of just operate in that. You don't have to think about a lot of things. But when you're fully independent as a business owner in the agency side, you got everything is wide open to you. And, sometimes when you have so many options, it could be challenging. But, well, okay. So,
all right. So here's my last thought.
Let's do it.
For those of you, if you're a solopreneur and you're trying to figure out what to do, my advice would be just look at your numbers. It is all numbers. You know what your revenues are, you know where you are. You're going to hate to hire someone because it's money out of your pocket, but you got to think about, you can scale your business. And so it really comes down to, how do you want to scale it and how do you want to grow and how quickly can you grow? So just know your numbers and know what the revenues are.
I think that's awesome. As we're I think that was great advice. I think as we're kind of closing this conversation down, do you have maybe a handful of other tips for members in the group who may be earlier in their journey, just kind of starting out or within the first, 1 to couple years? Are there a couple of bullet points that just float immediately to your head about things that maybe you would do differently, or just tips in general?
I think, you got to be consistent. Like you got to, once you figure out what works, do more of whatever works. Like if you're finding a lead source that's great, just go get more of those. Don't reinvent the wheel. Just do what you're doing well. I learned when I was at Farmers, I did some print advertising. It was literally burning money. And so showing up in person for me works. So you got to figure out what works for you and where the money's coming from. So figure out where the money's coming from, do more of that, track your numbers. If you're in your first or second year, look at what you produced in both years, map it out, figure out your 10-year plan. That's how I figured out I was going out on my own, is I mapped out a 10-year plan, and then I achieved it in about 6.5 years. So now I've got another 10-year plan. And then I got to look at the next 20 years too.
I love it. It's like Vision RPG 500, right? We got the march to 10, in 10 years, if we can, it's a wild, lofty goal, but I love that. That resonates with me.
Thanks. We will get there. We will definitely get there.
We're all on this fun journey together. It's been a little chaotic. I think the other thing too, for anybody that may be watching this down the road, the reality is these last few years we're in 2024, right? So post-COVID is really a black swan. It's hopefully once in a career event. And the rate suppression that came within California for those almost 3 years, 2.5 years, that's also maybe never to be repeated ever again, right? In our careers in California. And I bring those things up because this is a uniquely disruptive time that is creating all sorts of opportunities and challenges. And the beauty of the business is we get to adapt to meet those challenges and seize those opportunities. You can either cry about it and run the other direction, or you can kind of bob and weave and adapt. And, you've been doing a fantastic job of that, So,
thank you.
All right, guys. Aaron, thanks, bro. Appreciate you, dude. And hopefully if you were watching this, it was useful and valuable. And, Aaron's an open book and always happy to connect as well as I am. So, if you need anything, tap me on the shoulder. We're all here to help and keep getting better. So Thank you, dude. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Tony.
All right, guys.